This episode is dedicated to the late and great Matthew Jukes. You will be forever missed. I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Gadigal people. I pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
As Australians, we travel widely, we drink widely. Sometimes I think, to our detriment, we don't support our own wines enough. But it's in our nature. Like, that's what we do. We're all really curious.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Mike Iuliis is the current chair of judges for the Sydney Royal Wine Show, which recently celebrated its 200th anniversary. To mark the bicentenary, an industry symposium was recently held, and Mike joins me today to give me an insight into the recent judging week and the following events. Good morning or afternoon to you, Mike.
It is just in the afternoon, and thank you very much for having me. What a privilege and honour, and yes, big fan of the podcast and very excited to be here today.
Well, thank God someone's listening. I appreciate you. I actually have wanted to have you on for ages, but it's just about kind of knuckling down and getting you to do it. So we finally worked that out. Now, you didn't get your chair of judges role just because you're a handsome chap, although I'm sure that played a part. Tell us a little bit about your career background and about the 4 generations of your family.
Well, I'll try and keep it as brief as possible, but my dad emigrated to Australia in 1961. My grandfather was already here. My grandfather came out in 1955, sent for the family to come. He said his plan was always to go back to Italy. And after a few years here, he said, no, this is a pretty good place. There was still no work in Italy. So he sent for the family to come over and join him. So Dad grew up in Newcastle. He had and developed quite a huge passion for wine and food, but he was a fitter and turner by trade. He had a really successful business in repair and overhaul in the mining industry. And obviously, the mining industry is a part of who we are here in the Hunter, that you don't have to go too far to hit mine. So yeah, he had a business doing that, but would always come back, on his way out to go and see customers and do things. He would come back through the valley and meet up with Bruce Tyrrell or Stephen Lake, or go to Mount Pleasant and fill the car up with booze, and had quite an extensive cellar at home. So when I became involved when I sort of was deciding careers, and I was either to go into, I was studying science at uni. I had worked a little bit in the engineering side, but was kind of like, that's not really for me, and had a really deep love for applied science. And so I was looking at maybe a medical career or something. And then, did a vintage, and was, as like a lot of other people, a very familiar story of did a vintage and had an absolute ball. I could see the application of science with the industry, and didn't look back. And Dad was really excited because he's had always sort of kept a little bit of wine and made a bit of stuff and gave it, we drank it as, family events and stuff like that. And so I got involved in the industry and haven't really ever had a real job, which I did have 4 years. So I worked with David Hook for 4 years. Hookie used to make our wine before I was involved before I was making wine. So it was kind of the natural progression to go there, help him out, make his wine, make my wine, or make our wine, as well as he had a few contract clients. So I worked there for 4 years before we built the winery here on Broke Road.
So tell me, I do want to go back a little bit into your family history, just for a second. So just bear with me, because your Iuliis is an Italian name, is that right? And when your father immigrated out, whereabouts in Italy kind of was your family history? Where were you located?
So he was Abruzzo, so he grew up in the mountains. So basically due east of Rome, as you head over, you have to go across the mountain range to get down to the other coastline, the eastern coastline there. And so he grew up at a little village called Gumbrale, which is, if you go like sort of outside of holiday celebration times. It has a population of about probably 4 people, maybe 50. But if you go during, you know, summer holiday, Christmas times, Easter, like when people have their usual holidays, it is like jam packed, full of people. They're barbecuing, they're celebrating. They're out drinking till all hours. There's ski fields not too far away. There's great like mountain biking, hiking. It's quite relatively remote for Italy. But yeah, it's quite cold as well. So he's over there. He goes over quite a bit now that he's retired, and he spends a bit of time over there. And he's actually over there at the moment, escaping the heat because it's really hot. This summer has been extremely hot. So he's been over there, just living his life. But yeah, he's gone back up to the village just because it's like 25 degrees up there, whereas the rest of Italy's like sweltering through 40 degrees. So yeah.
How nice. I mean, I think, when you meet Italian families, they are always got something on the go. And I used to think it was a stereotype, but I think that there's so much truth in the fact that if there's an opportunity for you guys to do something yourself, you will do it, whether it be making, olive oil or limoncello or wine in that fact. So it's wonderful that you grew up with, a background of wine. Tell me, when you got everything going, you've got your winery happening, you're in that, where does judging come into it for you? When was that kind of moment where you thought, hey, wine shows are kind of a thing? When was that introduced to you?
So the Hunter Wine Show has this really cool program that I don't think I know a few do, but there's not a lot around, and there are a few more programs sort of specifically built around this idea. But that Len Evans introduced to the Hunter Wine Show a trainee associate judge position. So each year there was they had your usual panel of 3 judges, chair of judges, then your 3 judges. The Hunter actually has 3 associate judges, and then they had a panel of 3 trainee associate judges that just kind of sat around with the whole group of judges. So the Hunter was 3 panels, and then plus these sort of 3 roving trainee associate judges. And the role of this was actually to teach people how to judge. And for those that had never been to a wine show before, didn't know how it worked. So I applied for one of these trainee associate judge positions. And Len, or Mr. Evans, as I should say, his generosity with his knowledge and his time was, for me, as just a fan, was amazing. Like, he would spend 3/4 of his day with these trainee associates, and I was very lucky to have him spend 3/4 of his day with us. And he would like grab wines from other panels, and he'd be like, right, here's 10 wines, and 5 of them got nothing, and 2 got a bronze, and 2 got a silver, and there's a gold medal there. And then he would go, right, sort them out. I'll be back in half an hour. And you go through, taste the 10 wines. You'd come up with 5 nothings, your thing, and then he'd come back, right, what have you go take me through your wines? And he'd say, well, these, and then he'd go, yeah, you're wrong, and tell you why you were wrong and which ones were. And it was, it was just intriguing. And I kind of realized that having a small winery and getting better at winemaking and having a better palate, the only way to do that is, and you learn this pretty early on, is to taste as widely and as varied as you can, and as often as you can. So at university, we just went to as many free tastings as we could find. And as that went on, you got a job. It's like, well, wine shows are a great way to see, particularly the Hunter, because you see what your mates and your friends and your competitors and what's going on within the region. So that was kind of how I got in, and it was partly, to want to expand my knowledge and just to be a little bit better and see what was going on, and partly because it just intrigued me and I just love doing it. It's great fun.
It is great fun, and I think that's a huge part of it, is that it's a really cool week. But I think it's interesting because You speak about Len and how generous he is. For many people in the industry of my generation, we think of you as that incredible, generous spirit that's always bringing superb wines out of your own cellar to, many events and sharing them with people. So it's kind of filtered down through the years. But tell us a little bit about what it means to be chair of judges at the Sydney Royal Wine Show. Did you have to think long and hard whether you wanted to take up that position? Were you honoured to do so?
Obviously, the 200 years was it's mind-blowing to know that I've over all this time I've got to that I'm in the chair for the 200th year, and it's amazing. The story about getting asked to do it was I got the call and was asked to do it, and they said, and it was 18 months before I actually had to do it. So I'm like I can't. In my mind, I'm like, I can't do it. Like I've chaired a few smaller shows and panel chaired quite a lot of shows, and I was like, I can't. It's a capital city wine show. There's no way in the world I can do this. And then I'm like, well, I've got 18 months to get my head around it. So I said, righto, I'm happy to do it because you've given me 18 months notice, and I'm sure by 18 months time I will be 100% okay with it. And then the 18 months went like that, and I was I was shitting bricks.
Well, look, you've got big shoes, but there's some big shoes to fill in that legacy of a wonderful people that have been at the helm of the Sydney Royal Wine Show. But like you said, with the 200th anniversary and the symposium and the excitement around it, I mean, I think that it's just such a beautiful opportunity. I'm so glad that you said yes, because I think, your reputation, like you said, your generosity, you as a leader, you represent all of the things that we look up to in the industry. So I'm glad that even though you were shitting bricks, you said yes.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's very kind of you to say. But yeah, as you said, I'm after Sarah Crowe. And if there is one person I like that is just like, how do you go after? She is amazing. And, is just an amazing person, makes amazing wine. She's so organized. And it's like, you have to lower the bar a little bit for when you'll have to raise the seat a bit, but lower the bar. So, it was very flattered to be asked, particularly after someone as strong as Sarah. I mean, now they have in a rotation policy of 3 years for judges and chairs. I think they kind of regretted that policy when they had chairs in the seat. She would have stayed and would have been awesome for a long time. But she was definitely a hard act to follow.
Well, you're in your second year, so you're doing pretty well. You're managing to be invited back, which is a good thing. So tell me, how was the recent week of judging? I know that there were a couple of associates that I knew were so excited to be there, along with many other judges that had done Sydney before. So tell me, how was the judging week? How did it play out? How were submissions?
It was amazing. We had 1,537 entries, which was around about, I think we're about the same as last year, give or take a couple of wines. I can't tell. If I could tell you exactly, I would, but it was about that last year. Maybe it was 550 or something last year, but 1,550 last year. So we're about the same number of entries. The fun bit, and let me tell you, the really fun bit about being chair of judges is you put together the panels and the people that you have there. And wine shows, like the chair of judges, it's the one where you kind of speak about it, you present the awards. But I say this a lot, that wine show judging is a team sport, not an individual pursuit. And it is about the team that you put on the field. And I had a great week. There's such wonderful people. I'm only as good as my panel chairs, and to have people like Mel Chester, Gwen Olson, Jen Pfeiffer, Toby Barlow. It was just Rob Deletti from WA, Castle. It was it is an easy job. And particularly after the first year, I found quite nerve-wracking. Not that I didn't enjoy the first year, but I enjoyed this year so much more after after having 1 year there, I settled in. I kind of knew what I was in for. I knew the week, what it was all about. I actually had so much fun. So those guys running the show, and then being able to pick associates and get them, get them come up. And you have like super experienced ones, like had Kiri Irvin from Mercer Wines, and Kiri's great. Like she's a great judge. And then we had Polly, who Mackerel from Sydney, that she's unreal. But then like I had Bryce there, from Craigie Range now, and it was his first show, and he was amazing. Like he did such a great job, and such like amazing to have that sort of energy in the room. So that side was good fun, and that putting that team together and creating. I mean, as a chair of judges, I just try and create just an environment of inclusivity. I want everyone involved. And if you're there and you're kind of like, well, no one cares what I say. No one, like, he's just going to go and do what he wants to do anyway. Like, no one's having any fun with that. It's like, I'm just wasting, like, these people have given up their week to come and spend it with you and judging a wine show. So I feel the least I can do is, listen to them, take their opinions in, and trust them. And I think that's how you get the best wines up. It's trusting the other thing I say is you got to trust the process a lot. That process has been around for a long time and been developed and refined over many, many years. And it works for a reason. And you don't and you do enough wine show judging to know you don't have to pick every good wine yourself, because you are a part of a panel, and you pick your ones, someone picks their ones, and by that way, the right wines get up.
Mm. And we, like you said, there's such a diverse range of judges, from winemakers or viddies that are really technical down to the style judges or people that are selling wine. And so you get such a diverse range of palates, which is what we want. Tell me a little bit about some of the results. I know that, sometimes wines come up. I believe you've got a few of them actually, Mike, that come up and you taste it and you think that's a shoe in that gold, and then you find out what the wine is and know that it's won everything that it's ever been entered into. But then you get some really lovely surprises as well. So how did the results look? I mean, I know that you're probably really happy with the final wines, but when you saw what they were there surprises in there? Were there some that you just thought, yep, I could have predicted that?
There always is. There's always the ones that you're like, oh, I could have predicted that. So I'll give you some stats just because I've got them here and I know them. But yeah, so 1,537 wines entered with 58.5% achieving medals. And I think we ended up with a 6.8% gold strike rate. So 105 golds, which was, I think, 3 or 4 more wines than last year. I think we're about 102 or something last year. But yeah, so pretty at the higher end of gold medal strike rates for a capital city show. Usually they say between about 4 and 6%. So, and I mean, that was just how it fell out. 30 trophies that we awarded across. And the thing that I was really proud about this year was of the 30 trophies that were awarded for wines that were entered. 7 were from New South Wales, 7 from South Australia, 6 from Victoria, 5 Tassie, 4 WAs, and 1 multi-region wine. So that was really exciting to see that spread of wines and from, big producers, small producers. So the ones that just at the top of my head that I'm really excited about and excited for the producers too, the Wollonga 100, the Grenache is just like that wine, and that's the 24th. So they won the Grenache Trophy last year at Sydney with their 24. This is the 25. It's a different vineyard that won this year. The Bullet Springs vineyard from memory. I don't get it wrong, but yeah, a different wine this year, but the 2025. And that Grenache, like that is the gateway drug for me to get like people excited about drinking wine again. And if you're trying to get new drinkers or new people new to wine and get them excited about red wine or just drinking wine in general. Like those Grenaches that Renee's putting out from there are just yum. Like get them, drink them, and so they also won small producer again, which is wonderful. And so it should. And as I said, that's exciting. The other ones, obviously, the Pooley, Shiraz. Shiraz was in such a great space this year. And Cool Climate, this wine that came out, and I didn't notice it at first when it first came out. It was just, obviously had some depth and complexity, and it had this little spice component to it. And the more you looked at it, you're like, oh, and every time you own those wines that you go back to, and you're like, every time you go back, you see some little intricate detail you didn't pick up before. And then it's like, it's got pepper, like it's got that real, white pepper. And then you went back and you see something, it's like, no, it's got that sort of clothing. No, it's definitely pepper. And so there's a lot of discussion about that flavor profile and how interesting that wine was. And so excited for Anna Pooley and that brand that obviously it's not something that they're known for. They're much more known for their Pinot. And to have their Shiraz win was amazing. Probably the category that excited me the most, which has been a little bit of a bugbear, and I'll put my hand up here as well. And I think I know why. It is the kind of the other white category. The last few years, like you get excited about other reds, and other whites are always a little bit of a letdown. This year it was fun. Like the guys that did those classes came out really energized. There was obviously the Vermentino from First Creek, which is just delicious. Like that line and length on the palate is just beautiful. But that was up against an Albarino from Mudgee that was yum. And there was another Shannon, which was just delicious as well. That space now, I think what was happening before is winemakers were still finding their way with them in the winery. It wasn't that they were getting neglected or made badly. I think they were just trying to find what they were trying to achieve with these varieties. But also in the vineyard, there were probably young vines and there was probably crop levels doing weird things. And now the vineyards are getting more mature. Winemakers are kind of understanding what to do with them. And that space is something that is super exciting.
And I totally get when we have this higgledy-piggledy of things that had been in the ground forever, and so they'd just be making things like Viognier, and then you'd have the kind of new Fianos and these drought resistance, but people were kind of still figuring out, like you said, and am I going to make it like this or I'm going to make it like this? And we're getting to a place now where things are making sense, like you said, which is really cool to hear. And such three different varieties to put against each other would have been really great.
And it was fun. Yeah, great fun. I forgot to mention too in that Shiraz conversation when we had them up on the bench. So when we pulled back all the callbacks across, because the 2024 Shiraz class was judged across every panel. So the 6 panels at the wine show. So we had all the panel chairs involved in the discussion. We had Matthew Jukes there as well this year as our international judge, and so wonderful to have his opinion in the room. And he is so much fun to have on a judging panel. So I'm like, let's bring the fun. So Jukesy, you got to come in and look at these wines. And there was this one wine that caused a bit of discussion, and he was all in. Like Jukesy was just like, I'm all in on this thing. And it ended up getting it's right, it's a gold, but it's not our top gold. And then, so let's park it to one side, because Jukesy was just adamant that this was the wine. And that was, it ended up, when he came to me, came to me later that day, because it was the last day of full judging on the Wednesday. And he came to me and he said, I found my wine. And I'm like, fabulous. I said, what is, because he obviously gets to award his international judges. So, and I'm like, what is it? He goes, well, it's the Shiraz. And I said, oh, the one that we all that got the gold and you were all in. He said, yeah. So, which was of course the Oak Ridge. And he was, he was so excited that it was from Oak Ridge. It was kind of topical at the moment. Perfect time, and his reaction to that was really great, and that was a really cool wine, and lovely to see that wine rewarded.
That's so cool to hear. I think, and to have, these international judges that come from, live in different places of the world. Their culture is different. Their expectations of what Australian wine. I mean, Dukes certainly knows Australian wine like the back of his hand. But just to have that different energy in the room, to be speaking from a different place, it really has different weight to it, doesn't it?
And obviously with his job, the way he speaks about wine is so different to the way not you, because you speak about wine beautifully, but definitely for me, because I'm like just a bogan just talking about wine. But his vocabulary about wine, you just learn so much from hanging around with the way that he speaks, because he comes from this. The way he speaks about wine is a lot of fun. And he's just such a great guy to have in a room. And I think everyone, particularly, because I've known Dukesy for, I first met him probably 20 years ago, and which was the last time he was out for Sydney. It was probably around that time when he was doing his work with Tyson, and then, but all these younger associates coming through that had heard of him but never met him before. And I'm like, mate, you're going to love him. Like, he's the best guy. And they were just in awe of him. So that was really fabulous to see this next generation of people, coming through and meeting him for the first time, and such an icon of the wine industry. Yeah.
Totally. And I can't imagine you putting together a show where you had anyone that wasn't a lovely person. I'm sure that was on the top of your kind of list of they have to be cool.
Oh, hang on. I can go through the list and I'll tell you who's not coming back. No. Everyone
I want
there
to
is
hear who
great
MVP is, and no.
Did you say LVP, Liam Van Pelt? How did you know?
No, MVP. I do want to know a little bit about the after hours, and I'm not talking about like the debauchery that happens, but the program that you put together after the show, because it's a huge draw card for the learning about wine, the connections that you make as well. Tell me a little bit about, was there a formal evening? Was there some options played? Tell me a little bit about kind of how you structured, how you finishing up judging, and how you refuel yourself.
The judges' dinner on the Tuesday night. So this is actually the one. I mean, any comparison to Evans's, the way he does stuff, it is greatly appreciated. The one, I don't mean to do that, it just may have rubbed off that thing, but the one thing that I do try and what's the word? Emulate, is his love of a good restaurant. So we went, I'm like, right, 200 years. I want to take the judges somewhere like an iconic Sydney venue. And I was very fortunate. We went over Christmas. I went with my wife and some friends, and we went to Infinity by Mark Best at the top of, for those of you who don't know where it is, it's on the top of Sydney Tower, and it's the rotating restaurant. So I'm like, what a more iconic spot in Sydney than Sydney Tower, a rotating restaurant, and we will go there. And also to an iconic Sydney restaurant, they are 100% Australian wines on their wine list, which is amazing. So it's like, right, yes. And it's like, right, what we're going to do is we're going to do iconic Sydney venue, and we're going to have Australian wine, and those wines are either going to be iconic Australian wines or wines that have done well in the past at Sydney Royal. And my amazing panel chairs all put together brackets of wines that to kind of honour that. And we went there and had the most amazing meal in the most amazing spot with these wines that were phenomenal. So just to let you know what we had, Kim Bickley put together a bracket of Arras. We had 06, 07 and 08. The Ed Carr Late Disgorged. Rob Deletti put together a bracket of Rieslings, all of which have done really well at Sydney in the past. And then Gwen had put together an iconic bracket of Australian Chardonnay, as well as things that have done well, but like, Giaconda and Deepwoods Reserve. Mel Chester kind of put together this she wanted to do like this sort of textural light to medium bodied red bracket. So she had some Australian Gamay, and we had Pinot from that did well last year, the Yabby Lake from Tassie. And then Toby put together this amazing bracket of the sort of classic big house Australian red wines, Cabernet-based red wines, so, Windery, and really sort of classic Cabernet. And then you've got Jen Pfeiffer there who, it's like, well, Jen, I don't like to stereotype you, but can you bring fortifieds? And she put together the most amazing bracket of muskets, but also bought the barrel, a sample out of barrel from the 1947 vintage. And because she wanted to do 46, and she went and saw Madison, I might have mucked up his name there. So she wanted to bring the 46, but went to Morris, and they said, no, we won't give you the 46 because we think the 47 is better. So they bottled 3 500ml bottles out of the barrel of the 47. But what a privilege to be able, well, one, to taste that wine, but two, what a privilege to be able to go, oh, no, the 46 isn't that good. We'll give you the 47 instead. So we had the 1947 musket that she put against her 2024 musket, so we could see something that was so old next to something that eventually was going to head in that path. So it was just an absolute honour to see those wines, as well as the merchant print, Campbell's merchant prints. I can't remember the other one off the top of my head what we had now, but it was
Oh man.
such a great night.
If you didn't ask her to do that, it's a missed opportunity, and you'd have all the judges writing. So just incredible. And that's what, when we talk about the fun side of wine shows, this is what we're talking about. It's that holistic immersion in wine, and for young judges, or, to be there, to listen, to even just be a fly on the wall, but to taste it, to listen to what you guys have to say about it, to learn, and do it in this with like-minded people is just, you can't get that experience anywhere else. And it's just, it gets its hook in, and I think that what I think is so interesting in that we talked about Len Evans' tutorial and the interest that people want to get into that incredible once in a lifetime opportunity for a scholarship. And so that I need to do some judging. That's how I get in the door. There's those conversations that go around. But what I think is so fascinating is that the scholars that come out and their dedication after that experience to being part of judging for life is just, second to none. And it just goes to show why judging is so important, but why we have the kind of remarkable judges that we do have. In terms of international scale, are our judges up there in terms of being able to kind of step onto that platform and judge at things like Decanter? Do we have a good reputation, do you think?
Well, talking to Matthew Jukes about this, so this was one of his topics that he covered over on the symposium on the Friday, and he said, and this is his words, and I can't talk to it that much because I haven't judged internationally. I haven't done any international judging. But his words are that we have the best judges of wine in the world are in Australia. And the system that we have here, because the system over there is slightly different to how we judge wine, the International Wine Challenge and Decanter. It is a slightly different method of judging the actual, and he said that the rigor that we have here and the quality of judging here is the best that he's seen this is from someone that's judged all over the world and done many, many wine shows. He said that we have the best system here. And I think Australian winemakers drink very widely. We are, or Australian wine show judges, so I think I said Australian winemakers, but Australian wine show judges drink very widely. Australians drink very widely. I mean, as we travel as Australians, we travel widely, we drink widely. Sometimes I think, to our detriment, we don't support our own wines enough. But it's in our nature. Like, that's what we do. We're all really curious. So, and I think now with the thing that the tutorial is teaching us is giving us this grounding of where the great wines are in your mind and a reference point. And I think to be a good wine show judge, you need those reference points tucked somewhere deep in the recesses of your synapses in your brain that you can call on, because like maybe you don't, you sit there and you judge these alternate varietal classes and you hit a variety that you've never heard of. And you don't know what, great XYZ grape variety should taste like. And you go, hang on a second, I've had that before, or I've got this kind of process that I know what great wine, how it looks, and you can kind of go back there. Or when you see an example of, there was a really cool Nebbiolo that came up through judging, and it was a real, and when you see, and there was only literally one, it was a pretty small sample size, and you have to go to those places in your brain that go, I've had great Nebbiolo before. I've had great Barolo before. Where does this sit? Like, well, how does it compare in my mind? And if you haven't had that experience, then how can you be a great wine show judge? So it's and being able to pick those wines out and go, wow, that's a really cool. Like, if that was in a bracket of like good Nebbiolos from around the world, that would sit up pretty well. And be able to reward someone making those styles of wine too. You want to pick those wines out and be able to go, hey, that's a really cool. Like, I can see you having a go. Like, let's reward them.
Yeah. Because it can make a huge difference, whether it just means that, they sell a bit more, or the recognition, but they've made the effort to put that wine forward, to put that stock forward, to get the very honest feedback, which is kind of hard. Sometimes it's just, a couple of sentences and it is pretty honest feedback. So you're really putting yourself out there when you enter. I want to know about the symposium, because I think this is so needed, because time and time again, I hear people saying, I need to get into judging, but I don't know how to do it. So tell me, what was the symposium? What did you cover? Run me through a little bit about the information that was given out to people that attended.
Yeah, so the symposium was put together as something to kind of acknowledge the 200 years of Sydney Royal and where it has been. And when we were chatting about, months ago when this idea was kind of floated, it was like, well, this would be a great opportunity to be able to not only acknowledge where we've come from, but able to look forward. And it was kind of topical as well, I thought, given, with where wine shows are at and where the wine industry's at. And, it's let's be honest and frank, that, it's a tough place to be in the wine industry at the moment. It's hard to sell wine. People haven't, everything's expensive. People haven't got heaps of money. We've got a generation of people here that are coming up that aren't drinking as much. Or if they are drinking, they're not drinking wine. They're looking for alternatives. So we're all kind of going, wine show entries are declining because wineries haven't got as much money, or they're not selling as much wine. So it's like, well, let's have a look at where we've come from. That first wine show, there were maybe half a dozen wines put into it, and where it has come to and where we are now. So the first session on the day was panel chaired by Ian Riggs, with Sally Evans and Rob Deletti on his panel talking about the history of the wine show. Riggsy obviously has a big history with Sydney Royal. And his ability to recall stories and old Evans thing. He knows all the stories. So it was great having him and Sally there. And Rob being able to give the perspective of the current day show. And so that was the first session. The second session was that, as I mentioned before, that session with Matthew talking about that international perspective of Australian wine shows and where we sit. The session after lunch was with Sam Connew. No, sorry, Sam did the one was with PJ. Sorry, PJ and Tony Patterson. They kind of drilled down into that pathways to judging. So that was that information session about, right, you want to be a wine show judge? How do we get into it? What are some of the pathways to get into judging? Some of the programs that are available. Where does things like AWAC sit? Where does things like the tutorials sit? How to apply to being they're just simple stuff that we kind of take for granted, that that you can go to a wine show like Sydney Royal has a portal. You can just go in and there's an expression of interest. And if you want to be a wine show judge, anyone can go to that website and express their interest on being an associate judge or being a judge at the wine show. And people don't know that it's as simple as that. I really encourage my staff to get involved in the system. So it makes them better contributors around the tasting table here, whether they work in the wine club or whether they work in the winery. Like, I want people that can contribute. So to me, they go, well, how do I get involved? And I'm like, I need you to put aside 2 hours, sit at your desk and apply for as many wine shows as you want to, as you can, and then try and get into a few, and we'll go from there. And I'll give you the time off. Sometimes it works too well because they end up doing like a heap of wine shows, which is just like, But yeah, if you want to do wine shows, you've got to ask. That's first, and you got to tell people you want to do wine shows.
I think that's so interesting, because I think that people are a bit afraid of, can you put in a good word for me? Can I ask? I remember just sending, and I also think, is it okay to find out who the chair is and send an email? I mean, that's what I kind of did back in the day. And it was probably really annoying, but like, you don't sometimes get anywhere.
It's never been so easy to do it. Like, just slide into someone's DMs, like, who's the chair? Oh, Julian Langworthy. Slide into Julian's DM, say, hey, when you're sorting out your panels, I'm keen for a spot. Send an email to the wine show, so they've got all your contact information. And then when Jules is doing his panels, he'll go, oh, John or Jane, they messaged me, and then you look at the because I'll give you the spreadsheet of all the people that have expressed interest through the website, and you go, oh yeah, they messaged me, and it's that being able to recall. Yeah, sometimes it's not the right time, but if you're there and you've reached out, and it'll be like, oh yeah, I remember them, or yeah, that's the thing. And then the last session was the best session. That was my panel. And it wasn't because of me; it was because of my panel. So I was joined by Lauren Hanson and Luella Matthews to talk about the future of wine shows. And it was really enlightening to have those guys there with me to talk about, like what's the future? What does it look like? What are we going to be judging? What do young people want? How do we make sure, not just the ones that want to get involved, like how do we make sure that these guys, like, we don't want to miss talent? Like, how do we appeal to the next generation of great wine show, the next Len Evans, or, how do we make sure that we don't miss them or lose them to something else? Like, we got to make wine relevant. Like as I said earlier about, like, what are those gateway wines? Like, is it Grenache from McLaren Vale? Is it Spritz? I don't know. Like, I don't have how do we get people intrigued about wine? And we all had that wine experience of something, I remember, like, I was drinking wine when I was at university, and usually it was hanging off a Hills hoist in a bag. They probably weren't the wines I remember the most, but everyone had, like, a little bit of wine and then had something that they went, hang on a second, that's really cool, and found that wine experience for them. And it's making sure we get those wine experiences out. And what wine shows are going to look like, I don't know, but it was lovely to have a chat and have a really open forum. And we also did a little bit of a mock judging, just to let people know, sort of give them a little peek on the inside of so we had, every panel had a little sample of wines, 4 wines with each session. We had Shiraz, and it was really good to do a little mock judging with the crowd. I had our panel, me panel chairing, and Luella and Lauren there, and then I drew on my inexperienced associates were Stu Horden and Toby Barlow in the crowd as my inexperienced associates that we shot down, and then I had the joint chair of judges, PJ and Sam Connew, come up and tell me I was wrong. So it was great fun.
I love it. Well, it sounds like it was, first of all, really necessary to do things like that. I'd love to see something like that continue. Maybe it can't be done every year, but I really do think that is an amazing opportunity. I'd like to see more of those actually done throughout the rest of the country as well for each state. But
that's the big thing. Is it was such a great thing to do, but I think you're right. Like, we need to do it around the country because no one from WA is flying into Sydney for that. But maybe they look at that. Someone looks at that in WA and goes, "Hey, why don't we do that over here?" And we'd start talking to young people, the trade, exhibitors, and getting them back engaged in wine shows.
Totally. And it maybe even next year, if they can't do it, maybe they could live stream it or something for the opportunity for people that can't get there. But we do need to think broader. I'm all about bringing the goon bag and the Hills hoist back. I think we should make that a little bit of, university, a rite of passage. If you live in Australia, you need to have that kind of experience. But I think, mostly let's remember that it's fun. There's so much seriousness that we can get down into, and there's a lot of serious chats, isn't there, when you're at a wine show, and the nitty gritty and the detail, and you're tasting a wine not once, not twice, many, many times over the day. Maybe not the chair, but for all of us plebs that are doing the judging, we taste a lot. So, but then there's so much fun too, right? And then there's the banter, and there's the fun, and there's the silliness, and the all the bits that go with this wonderful industry that we've chosen to be a part of. So I'm so glad that mining didn't beckon you in, Mike, and that we managed to get you over to the dark side and that you've stayed. Iuliis wines are phenomenal. If you haven't been to the Hunter Valley, first of all, it's a really good time. The wines are bloody sensational, crazy award winning, but that's a fun place to be at your cellar door. And I think it's always on my recommendations because I'm like, whatever kind of background you have, if you stop at Luliis wines, you're going to have a really good time there. And I think that is...
Oh, I'm using that. I'm quoting you.
I love it. No, I totally stand by it. Congratulations on your second year. Look forward to hearing all the results at the end of the day. And I think that you are absolutely the right person in the right shoes to be celebrating the 200th anniversary. So thank you for filling me in a little bit about your experience this year.
Well, thank you for having me on. I've been waiting for many, many, many years for the opportunity. Long time listener, first time caller. Lovely to be here.
Just the best. You haven't disappointed at all. You've exceeded my expectations, Iuliis. Now you do have a bit of a love affair with this chair role now. You've got a few more chair roles coming up this year. So we're going to see you sitting in the hot seat for a bit more. Best of luck with the judging season.
Yeah, off to Orange. If there's somewhere you can have a good time, you go to Orange. And after you come to the Hunter, you go to Orange and have a good time there.
So good. I love it. Keep plugging those New South Wales wines. Cheers to you. Thank you for being on, and I hope our paths cross soon.
Absolute pleasure. Lovely to talk to you.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram @overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.